Good morning, guys. I hope your week's going well. We are doing 3.7 warm-up, and today here is the warm-up, okay? Let's do a little bit of reminder to help you guys. And given the matrix below, answer the following questions. And here you have a matrix, okay? And normally it's a bracket, and the reason those are straight is because I can't make them that big when I was writing it. So, what entry is A21? Remember, this is your row, this is your column. So on the second row, so it'll be these guys. First column, which would be number 2. So what is that entry? An entry is each one of these numbers. So that entry at 2-1 is number 2. What is the address of -1? So here's -1, okay? We're going to call this matrix A. And it says, what is the address of -1? Well, the matrix is at A, because I didn't name it, so I'm going to name it A. It's in the third row, first column, just like that. What are the dimensions? Remember, your dimension is always rows by columns. And so the dimension of this one is 3 rows, 3 columns. So it's a 3 by 3. And there you have your warm-up for 3.7. Make sure you submit in Google Classroom. All right, let's go on to today. This is what you guys are learning today. Today, you will be able to solve systems of equations using matrices. You have done it. You have done matrices. You have used determinant to find your inverses. And now you're going to use the inverses to solve systems of equations. Okay? All right. So in the past, you have done systems of equations. You've done it by graphing. Like you would have a line going this way, you'll have another line going this way, and where they cross would be your solution. That means x and y works for both of these lines, and that's what it means when you are solving systems of equations. You have also done it, for example, say you have 2x plus y equals 4, and then you have y equals 5, and you have substituted wherever y is, you would substitute that with 5. So here you would have 2x plus 5 equals 4, and that's how you solve for x. And that's how you get your solution for x and y, okay? You've also done it by elimination. An example that would be like 2x plus y equals 4, negative 2x minus 3y equals 9, and you would eliminate one of your variables, so that way you can solve for the other one. So you solve for y, you plug y back into this one or this one, and then you solve for x. So you've done that with eliminations. So today we're going to learn to do it by matrices. All right? Here are your steps that you are going to need in order to solve. So, not steps, I'm so sorry. To solve systems of equation matrices, we also use the inverse. Keep in mind, when you are always solving for something, you got to have an equation, and you always use the inverse. So if you have this right here, to undo adding, you subtract. So immediately you would subtract 3 on both sides, and then you would solve. If you have a multiplication, like 2x equals 6, you would divide them by 2, okay? To do undo a square, you would take a square root. So if you're solving for x, you would take a square root. What you do to one side, you do to the other side. So today we're going to undo a matrix, and it's going to take an inverse. Now, keep in mind, they don't always have an inverse. So if you don't have an inverse, you're not going to be able to do it, okay? Because not every matrix has an inverse. So just keep that in mind. All right. So here are what you need to do. Step number 1. You turn your systems of equations into a matrix equations. So here I have an equation. X plus y equals 1. Notice the coefficient is always a 1, so if there's nothing written with it. I'm going to turn this into a matrix. You see that right there? So I have 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, okay? And the two variables that you have is x and y. And yes, you have to write it in this order. This first part is called a coefficient matrix. Why? Because you're writing down the coefficient. This next one is called your variable matrix. And there's your x and your y. And then you have your constant matrix, because these are your constant, okay? Do you have to write it in this order? And the answer is yes, because take a look at your dimension. You have a 2 by 2 and you have a 2 by 1. Do you see how these two has to be the same? And once you're done with that and you multiply them, notice you're going to have a 2 by 1 over here when you finish. All right. So first of all, you turn your system into an equation. Make sure you follow the steps, because you have to show me that you understand how to do this, okay? The goal of the equation is to get the variables alone. So how do we move the blue matrix to the other side? And I'm so sorry I don't have a blue, okay? So basically, I want to be able to multiply this so I can undo the other side, and therefore you're going to use the inverse. So basically, this is what you do next. To multiply by the inverse, we need to actually find the inverse. So you're going to take your coefficient matrix and you're going to find the inverse. Remember us doing this? Okay? Good morning. But an easier way to also do that is to have your matrix, now that you know how to do that, and put it to -1. That's an easier way to do it. All right? So you're going to find the inverse. Why? Because eventually you're going to get rid of one of them. And what you do to one side, you do to the other side. Okay? So let me keep walking you guys through, and then we'll do an example, and then it'll make a lot more sense. So I found the inverse right here. And when I do the inverse, I put it right here. And guess what these guys, what happens here? They're going to cancel out. So notice, I'm going to call this the inverse times the matrix. They're going to cancel out, but what you do to one side, you do to the other side. Okay? And yes, you have to put this in front, because if you don't, your matrices won't multiply and you can't cancel them out. You cannot switch these orders. It has to be in the same order right here. So once that cancel out, notice your identity matrix. Okay? An identity matrix. And then you're going to multiply this part, and that'll give you your solution. What does this mean? This means 1x, let me rewrite this over here. 1x plus 0y equals x. You see that right there? And over here it's 0x plus 1y equals that y. Okay? So there's your identity matrix. And yes, you have to put this one in front, because if you have it reversed, say you write this one first, and then you write the identity, notice you cannot cancel them out. Okay? So yes, no. All right. So let's do an example, and I think it'll make a lot more sense if I show you the examples. Okay? Let's finish this first though. Multiply the right side by hand over the calculator. So get your calculator. You're going to take the inverse. So let me clear my calculator. So alpha zoom, here's your inverse. It's a 2 by 2. Okay, and basically you can do this with any systems of equation. There's my inverse times alpha zoom 2 by 1. Okay, 8, 1. And you have -7 and -15. Oh, positive 15, my fault. What does this mean? This means x is equal to -7, y is equal to 15, and you can write it just like this. Because here's your x, here's your y. So if I were to graph these two equations, this is where they would cross. I know that sounds kind of confusing, but let's do an example, and I think it will make a lot more sense. Okay? And it'll go a lot faster. Here we go. Let's look at this example. Step number 1, create your coefficient matrix. 1, 1, 2, 3. See that right there? So that's your coefficient matrix. Next, create your variable matrix, which is x and y. Equal, leave yourself a space. Write your constant matrix. Okay, now I'm going to change my pen real quick. Next step. I want to undo this matrix. We can call it A. To undo it, we have to take the inverse. Right there. And what you do to one side, you do to the other side. Did you guys see that? Okay. So how do you find this inverse matrix? Well, let me show you. AlphaZoom, you take your coefficient matrix, just like that, and you're going to type 1, 1, 2, 3. Okay? You remember this key right here that says -1? Push that. See how that says -1? That's your inverse. Now push enter. It's a whole number. If it was a fraction, you would make it into a fraction. If it's a decimal, change it to a fraction. So there's your inverse. 3, -1, -2, 1. What you do to one side, you do to the other side. Okay? So, let me find a different color pen. So what happens is, these guys are going to cancel out. And let me show you why it cancels out. Okay? So I have that matrix multiply. See A and S, that means it's previous answer. I'm going to multiply times my coefficient matrix. And I'll show you that. But you don't have to do this part. I'm just showing you this part. Notice how you got the identity. Okay? That's why they cancel out. And so when they cancel out, you bring down what you have left, which is X and Y. Okay? So you take your identity, you take your inverse, AlphaZoom, which is 3, -1, good morning, -2, 1. You multiply times your constant, okay, which is AlphaZoom, and it's a 2 by 1. And there you have your answer. Now keep in mind, you got to write that at the beginning. So 3 and 1. What does this mean? This means X is 3, Y is 1. Okay, and there you have it. See how that's easy? So, it depends if you like this method or not. She'll be here. Wait a minute, is this Thursday? It's Wednesday, right? I think she's supposed to be here. And if not, you have me teaching. Sorry.
Okay. Just, I told her Thursday, Wednesday last week I have her portrait show sometime.
I'm doing a video. Give me just a moment. Okay. Let me try to finish for the option B kids. All right. Let's do another one. Okay. Step number 1. Write that as a matrix. Okay, your coefficient matrix. So you have -8, -5. Notice I don't have as X. So we're going to put 0 in that place, and your Y is 1. I'm labeling it for you, but you don't have to. Here's your variable matrix. So we have an X and a Y equal. Leave yourself a space. Here is your constant matrix. Okay. So first of all, I want to cancel this. So I have to go find my inverse. And what you do to one side, you do to the other side. See that right there? All right. So let's go find our inverse. AlphaZoom. And you have -8, -5, 0, 1. Go to your inverse button. Push enter. You get a decimal. No big deal. Hit math fract. So -1, 8, -5, 8, 0, and 1. Okay? What you do to one side, you do to the other side. Just like you're solving. What happened to these guys? These gets canceled out. And all you have left is your variable matrix, X and Y. You take that, see how it's already done for you, times AlphaZoom, 2 by 1. Okay, and that is 8. There's your constant matrix. And so the answer to this one is 4 and -8. That means x is 4, y is negative 8. Okay? You can leave your answers like this or like this. All right, so as you can see, it's not too bad. So here is how you solve systems of equation using inverses. If you have any questions, let me know. Have a good day.